As we have looked into Queen Victoria's proclamation, that is a very important question because she has made so many policies she has reformed and that she was supposed to implement, and that was a great relief to Indians also listening to that one. That is a very important question. What are the proclamations she has made in the charter? The second point we'll be going with, it is military reforms. We have looked into the other one, the military causes. Some problems were going on, how the Britishers were behaving and how the Indians were revolting, and based on that, this also is a part of your Queen's proclamation, but this becomes into military reforms. What are the reforms, what are the points they have changed under the military rule? And thus the first point they have taken, like reducing the native soldiers and increasing the European soldiers. As in the very beginning we have talked about the trio, the Dalhousie trio, in that they have asked the European sepoys to be increased or the rulers to be increased there, but somehow that failed. And that gave a chance for the Indians to go with the revolt. It was little easy for the Indians to go with the revolt. So immediately they have given a chance here, they have changed it, and they said it is the native soldiers who were 2,38,000 at that time, they were reduced, they were removed from their post, and only 1,40,000 people or the sepoys, Indian sepoys were kept there or recruited. And the European soldiers who were only 45,000, now they were increased to 65,000. And they have even taken a policy saying in Bengal lots of agitations and revolts were going on. So in Bengal they have kept 2:1 ratio, that is 2 ratio will be Europeans and 1 ratio will be Indians. So in that way they have made a reform. Artillery with the British troops. Artillery is the weapons to be used. So maximum the British troop was given the artilleries, and the reform was the second one. Excluding Indians from the officers' corps. So officer level, in whatever the level, officer level, the Indians were there. From there the Indians were removed and the Britishers were given the higher posts. European troops were kept in key geographical and military positions. And these people who were recruited according to their qualification and according to their ability as well, and they were recruited and they were given the key positions. Geographically means it is in the very interior parts the Indian were sent out where lots of troubles were there, and the easy part and where the Europeans can comfortably stay and organize, in those areas the Europeans were allowed, they were kept. Like we say, it is geographical area. The best geographical area was given to them. And even the military positions, the best military positions were given to the Europeans. Divide and rule. This is what the very common one. We knew lots of stories regarding this one. The divide and rule. On the basis of caste, religion and region, like we can say community, caste, tribal, religion, loyalties were encouraged among the soldiers to curb the growth of nationalism. They were allotting, they were recruiting all the people, but in between they keep on putting these kind of anti-national elements, like it is, they give importance to, or they say it is divide and rule policy they use, and they start dividing on the basis of religion and caste within the soldiers, so that they don't unite and they don't go with nationalism. The idea of nationalism doesn't come. If the idea of nationalism comes, it becomes a problem to the Britishers. So they allot, they recruit, they give all the positions, but still they keep on putting the things in between, saying that how to divide these people and give a small kind of agitation within these communal groups, so that they are interfering themselves, or they are into their own points, and they are not thinking about the country, and they are not coming out with the big revolts. This is the point they have taken. The divide and rule we shall be looking in detail furthermore. Okay, now we shall be looking into the relation with the princely states. British was playing lots of tricks. It was going into taking up lots of strategies so that it can rectify the position of India, and it can rule here for furthermore years. So whatever possible things it could do, those all it was playing, and it was making the reforms. Like we have talked about the military reforms, like we have talked about the Queen's proclamation. This also is a part of that. So here the British realized the importance of the princely states. The British was overall the ruler here, but some of the state areas or the territories, they were under the prince. Prince was strong enough, and the British has given it to rule. But it now wanted, the Britishers wanted to take them into consideration so that they can nicely, they were not giving the India to those people, to the princes here, but still they wanted to take them under their confidence, and they wanted to work along the prince, so that in further or future they can be a strength to them. And further, any kind of, like it is the Russia, any kind of your problems come into, they can collectively solve the problem. So they wanted to take this princely states or the prince into consideration, into their confidence. So British realized the importance of the princely state. It was this one is the important point. It was apprehensive of Russian invasion. There was a possibility that Russia can invade India, and to face that one, they wanted the support of, if princely states are supporting British, it would be easy for the Russians to move from here, or the Britishers to remove Russians from the country. They had an idea that Russia can invade. So beforehand, they started going and having a handshake with the princely states. Annexing of princely states was given up. This one we have seen in the proclamation of Queen Victoria also, that annexing was not allowed, they have removed it. The princely state annexation was also removed. So the annexation was totally given up, so that the Indian princes became the agents of the British crown. Annexing was not done, but they were given the place, the territory, so that the British, they will be under the British rule. The prince will be under the British rule, and they will be handling, everything will be like it is, taking the taxes, movement of the treasury and all, everything will be taken care by the prince, but they are under the rule of the Britishers. Rule in their respective, and they are allowed to rule in their respective areas. Rule in their respective states was promised. They were given the responsibility, and they said you can rule your country and you can rule your territory according to your will and wish. After this, to strengthen the British rule in the country, they turned to the zamindars and landlords. And later on, the princely state they have taken into consideration, they had a handshake, and that was okay. But next on it went on with, they turned towards, we had small groups. If it is a princely state, in that also we have a small group, like it is zamindars and landlords, who are very reactionary groups. We call them as a reactionary groups. If they are in our hands or in the Britishers' hand, that will be very easy for them to rule the country further in future. So they, even after they have cleared all the points with the princely states, they just turned towards the zamindars and landlords, and there they wanted them to join the group, so that their positions will be given, but they will be under the British rule. And in future, if any kind of your circumstances or consequences come, like it is the Russian invasion or any such kind comes into, so that the whole country can become one. So in that way, they started taking the positive points from, or taking consideration from all such kind of groups, like it is princely states or zamindars or landlords. This way, they have gone with the relation with the princely states. Now coming to your divide and rule policy, it is well said in the previous one also. I said British was always with the divide and rule policy, and India was with Muslims, Christians, and other religions were there here, when we were very nicely living with the brotherlyhood. And this was the point where British could interfere into our religion, it divided us, and it started making a fight in between us. So British believed that the Muslims conspired and led to the revolt. They felt as if it was only the Muslims were doing this, and they were the one who were going with the revolts against Britishers. So whoever they found it as they were going, or whoever they found it as they were conspiring, these Britishers started punishing the Muslims. But later on they found it as punishing Muslims was still creating problems. So slowly, after a year or two, slowly, they started going with they started creating peace or shaking hands with Muslims, and they started creating peace with Muslims. Post-mutiny, growing distance between Muslims. Mutiny is the disobeyment. So they were disobeying. Many of the religions were disobeying. They were going against the Britishers. So post-mutiny, after that one, after the revolts have gone, they have seen that there was a distance between India has witnessed that there was a distance between the Muslims and Hindus, basically, and other religions as well. So a very distancing was again creating a problem within the country, within the religions, where you can say it was a plus point for the Britishers. Then next point is with your impact of economy. So all these rules, all these changes, so many of revolts, British coming, bringing the new policies, everything, there should be a change which is going to affect something or the other. It is definitely going to affect our economy. So it has affected our economy, and in that also what are the causes and what are the things went on wrong or right, we are going to look into that one. So the typical colonial economy in this British has become typically it has become a colonial part, and it started ruling the country. In that, what exactly it was going on, we are looking into, like whatever the raw material is produced in the country, that has to be processed for the further economic conditions of the country, so that you have the business growing in the country. But here the British has taken all, it used to take away the raw material to its own country, and there it had finished centers at England, and the whole of the material was processed there. For example, our textile industries, cotton and silk industries, those were taken to those England areas where they had the machines and the big machines, and the industries were kept there. The raw material was totally processed, and it was brought back, the finished product was brought back to India, and it was dumped here at the cheaper, because it was a machinery good, machine good. So the product was relatively cheaper, and it was dumped into this country, where the raw material, when they take from our Indians or the farmers, raw material is relatively cheaper. When you talk about the finished product, it becomes little costlier when Indians are processing the whole of the raw material to, they are going with the process, and they are going towards the finished product and selling the finished product in the country. That will give the economy to the country or the Indian people. But here the whole of the money was going off into the hands of Britishers. The British was dumping their material, the finished product, into our country. The salaries of army came from the Indian taxpayers. This is one more point here. Whatever the tax they have collected, and they have put in such a kind of, when we have any kind of economy going on, we divide the money. What is the money, which part of the money should be given to what, and how we are developing our country. Here the profits were directly taken away by them. And next part, the army salary was to be given by the taxpayers. What amount is being collected from the taxpayers, that will be divided to the army people. But here the taxpayer, the money is not in their hands, they are not earning the profits. This is one, and they are having a less amount of tax to be given. And from that, the armies have to be paid. So this was how the exploitation level was going on. First, this is interconnected. Both parts are different. The farmer's part is different, the army part is different, but it is interconnected. And here when you say it is farmers, they are with the raw material production, and the final production is not done. That raw material is, again, that raw material, whatever they have sold, on that basis they are giving the tax. Very minimum tax has been collected. That tax has to be given. Britishers have taken into, that tax will be considered as the salary for the armies. So this was the exploitation levels of. When we talked about the Queen's Proclamation, their rules were so very nicely designed. This is how their things are getting exploited and not followed. Okay, now it is, as we were looking into, the tax was maximum tax, or the taxpayers were the one who were supposed to give the salaries of the armies. And here, even the British has looked into, more than half of the tax went off to the England as home charges. As they were giving us services, we are supposed to give them some extra charge, that is known as your home charge. And more than half of our tax, it was actually, when we take any of the tax, or in our democratic country when a tax has been taken, that has to be given back to the country in the form of the facilities to the country, like it is education, hospitals, and any kind of your civic amenities. So here, instead of that, the money is directly being given off to the Britishers, or being sent off to the England. But that, when the money is being sent off to England, what is left out here? The money is taken from the Indians or the people, and it is sent off to England. But here, what is that left out with? So again, it is a kind of exploitation. The exploitation part is getting higher. the Indians had to pay the salaries. Now again the extra charge is taken in the form of tax, and which is sent off to England, as it is in the name of home charges. Huge drain of country's resources, lots of country's resources in any of the kinds, either it is in money or any of the resources, like it is raw material, or you can say it as any of our other resources. Everything has been transferred to other places, but the profits are not given to the person who is actually producing it. The huge drains of resources. British invested on the railways, and this one also is one of the important point here. It invested onto the railways, shippings, plantations. It has put on its money. Now it wants the money in the form of returns, in the form of profits, and it says Indians to pay the money, and where we were supposed to pay the interest rates. In this way we were highly burdened under such kind of taxes. Indians were highly burdened. Peasants were exploited. This we have already discussed, how the peasants were exploited, the raw materials and all. Heavy tax burdens, the heavy taxes, these all points led towards the heavy taxes, and it was very burdensome onto the heads of the Indians, where we were not actually we were not earning so much, rather the double of it we were supposed to give off in the form of taxes. No relief. Finally, what was the result? There is no relief from the landlords, neither the landlords nor the Britishers. So it was totally, we were into total exploitation. We were working, but we were not getting the returns. We were not getting the profits. We were always exploited, and the material were taken away by the Britishers, and the Britishers were enjoying, and the Britain was enjoying the profits, and India was left out in a very sad condition, pathetic situation. This comes to an end of our chapter. So we are just going with the analysis of nature of revolts. Many people, they have looked into many historians keep on going with the analysis. So they look into what are the kind of revolts we were into. The first one we can say, many of our historians have thought of it as just a Sepoy mutiny. Sepoys were revolting. We have looked into it as cartage, with the cows and the pigs fat were used into, how the revolt has gone. Mangal Pandey was involved into that one. In that way, it was just a Sepoys mutiny. And we can say it is many of the people have, even we have the people like Nehru and all, they have made an analysis, and they have written many things in their books. They have written, and we can say V.D. Savarkar, he has written a book, The Indian War of Independence. His book name is Indian War of Independence. In that, he has written about the first War of Independence, and he has even given all these kind of, what are the kinds of revolts. The next book was going with Jawaharlal Nehru. It was regarding the rise of national movement, and the book's name was Discovery of India. They have given, it is based on these all analysis, we can come to a conclusion that how our first war of independence has taken place, and how it was in 1857. Later on, after nearly about after 100 years, this is the inspiration. We can say like it is Mangal Pandey, Tantia Tope, Rani Lakshmi Bai. They were the inspirations for the next events to go on, for the next revolts to go on. And the books also give the same information regarding the revolts and how it has inspired the people. Once they are dead, at that particular time they were not that very strong, they revolted, but they were killed also. Again, their informations or their inspiration was the further people could take it to, and they started going with the next revolts, but in a very planned way. Slowly the revolts started increasing. Whatever the analysis goes on, might be it is mutiny of the sepoys, might be it is the conspiracy of the Hindus and Muslims, but ultimately what is the result we wanted? We wanted the country to be free from the colonial rule. And it has led towards nearly 100 years we have crossed, and in 1947 we got our independence from the hands of Britishers.